Hey, entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Business Building Rockstar Show. This is Nicole Holland, and I am so excited to have Christy Haussler here with us today. She began her podcasting journey in 2012 and started her local business podcast while working her corporate job in customer relations. In 2014, Christy walked away from the golden handcuffs and quit her job, moved to Key West, Florida to reinvent herself. She started her company Team Podcast and built it into a six-figure company in less than a year without taking on any debt. And I am so excited to bring this interview to you. And I am so appreciative of Christy to come back and join me because we actually already did this interview and I forgot to hit record. So entrepreneurs, it happens to all of us. We all screw up and we got to roll with the punches. And so Christy, thank you so much for your patience and for coming back and sharing some more time with me.
Glad to do it. Not a problem. It happens to everyone. So you're in the club now.
Very cool. So Christy, are you ready to rock?
Absolutely.
Woohoo!
There you go.
Okay. So we've already kind of talked about a lot of this, but our listeners have not heard any of it. So I want to start out with you telling us the story of how you got started in entrepreneurship when you were just a wee little girl.
When I was a wee little girl, although I have always felt like I was an introvert, very shy child most of the time, I can remember being very young and, just beyond the age where you start reading and that sort of thing, and going and getting those catalog things where you decide to sell gift wrap or you decide to sell greeting cards or light bulbs or other things to your neighbors so that you earn points and that you can redeem for prizes. It was kind of like, the prizes you would get on the S&H green stamps or something like that, but everything that you would sell would give you so many points and you would accumulate. So I would go around my neighborhood selling those things, and I was very, I was very introverted, and so I wasn't one of those kids that would just go out on my own, but occasionally I did, and I would sometimes go to our neighbors' houses, and they wouldn't, without my mom or dad there, they wouldn't know who I was on my own. And so they would say, no, I don't want any, and shut the door in my face. And I'd come home and cry to my mom and be like, your friend wouldn't buy anything from me. So then, she would call and be like, Christy came over there because you told me to send her over there. And now you didn't, buy anything. They were, oh, I didn't know that was her. Send her back over here. I'll buy something. So I can remember, in fact, I still have this. I found it the other day in a box when I was going through some stuff after we had moved, and I got my first baseball glove that way. And I would, I just learned early on that if you wanted things that weren't going to be given to you by mom and dad, that you had to work for them. And although sales is not something that's always come naturally to me, for whatever reason, I figured out a way to muster up the courage to suck it up and do it just to get what I wanted on the other end of it. I think I got my first sleeping bag that way, got my first baseball glove that way, several things like that.
That is so cool. And when we talked originally, you triggered this memory for me because I totally had forgotten about that. But yes, way before the internet ever existed, I used to do those mail order things too and get those prizes and save up.
And I don't even know what that was, where was it a magazine subscription that we had that had those in it? Was it part of the Highlights program? You remember Highlights, right? And those other, I don't know where that stuff came from because it really wasn't affiliated with like a school or a group or anything.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I remember different things. What was it? The Scholastic. They still have those, but I know
they might. Yeah, that's true. It was something like the early precursor of all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And whatever it was, I figured out a way to sell a few things and get a few coveted trinkets for myself.
Cool.
So
I think too it was something where it was like at the back of all the magazines where you could
it might have been. Yeah, you get a catalog and then a few, almost like a little sample packet too that would show a few little samples of some things. So yeah,
it was like Avon for little kids.
It was like, it's like child labor, I guess. Yeah. Really, it's like the early network marketing, right? Instead of recruiting your downline, they were recruiting the child child labor. So
And it's funny you mentioned that because I remember as a kid, I mean, they had obviously forever network marketing, like
yeah,
Tupperware, we'd have the Tupperware
Tupperware and
paper come over
Amway.
and Amway.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's sort of
absolutely.
like, as a kid, you could
And
get in
home interiors. Do you remember home interiors
No.
parties? Yeah, that was like, I guess that was like Kirkland type stuff for the house, where you'd buy crazy stuff for your home. But yeah, home
Very cool.
interior party. So blast from the past.
Yes. So you were doing that when you were a kid, but you didn't really, it wasn't something that you then thought, oh my gosh, I want to be an entrepreneur. You
No.
totally just didn't. What was
No,
the path
I
like?
always wanted to be a teacher. And
Mhm.
so I was, heavily involved in sports and everything all through school. And so teaching and coaching was what I wanted to do. And so that's what I ended up going to college for and getting a teaching degree in physical education and that sort of thing. So, I don't, I'd never, business was not even at the forefront of my mind. In fact, I had a few friends in college that were like accounting majors or marketing majors or whatever. And, there was not one single question I could have thought to ask them that would have interested me about
Right.
what they were majoring in at the time. So,
So you were a PE teacher
yes. Uh-huh.
and
Health
it
and
didn't,
physical education. Yep.
okay. And it didn't end there though. You wound up doing something else before entrepreneurship full time, right?
I did. I realized one day, as I was teaching and I was out on the soccer field with a group of, I had ninth grade PE, freshman PE at the time. And I found myself, and I'm not a big swear word person, but I found myself telling a child they had exasperated me so much to get the H out of my classroom, which was the field, the ball field, and go to the principal's office. And then I suddenly had like a flash forward of maybe me ending up on the news or something like that. And I thought, you know what? This is not probably something that I'm going to be able to put up with full time, because it drove me crazy, the level of respect or the behavior issues with the kids. And I ended up leaving there and going and getting a job in a call center. And I started out and just at the very bottom as a rep on the phones, worked my way up to training, both sales. I was luckily in an inbound and outbound call center. So I got my job as a trainer and trained both inbound sales and outbound sales and customer service as well, both inbound and outbound. And then became a supervisor and then managed at bigger groups of reps and that sort of thing. So I ended up spending about 25 years in customer relations, dating myself. If the S&H green stamps and the highlights didn't date me already, the 25 years in customer relations will date me before I ended up switching gears again. So.
Awesome. And I love that you bring that up because dating yourself is kind of exciting, I think. Because, I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs and newer entrepreneurs and even people who just kind of have done something on the side or thought about it. Maybe they have been Tupperware ladies or Avon or Mary Kay or whatever. They're moms, a lot of empty nesters who they think they want to do something and they're just not sure that they can because the internet and everything's so
Yeah.
fast now. And so what do you say to people? What was your experience in moving out of a stable job, working for somebody else, and your foray into market or business, but also using the internet as your primary source of marketing?
Well, it was kind of a long process. And now I look back on my, the course of my journey over the years, and I realized that each job prepared me for the next, and each boss kind of prepared me for the next. I would have never, coming right out of college, had any, hang on, I want to cough 1 second. Coming out of college, I would have never had the guts or the confidence to say, I'm going to go into business for myself because I have a PE degree. That wasn't anything that was even on my mind, and even sales or any type of job like that, I was just way too introverted. But as I grew in my business knowledge and I grew and I kind of got recruited after a long stint at one company where we got downsized. I got recruited by a couple of other companies to come and manage their call centers. And that further prepared me and gave me more business exposure and more autonomy running, sort of like running a segment of the business. And the more I did that, the more I got more confidence. And you begin to start preparing yourself mentally, thinking, if I were running this, here's how I would do it. Or this doesn't make any sense to me. And if I worked for myself, here's how I would do it. And you start having those thoughts, even though you might not have the confidence to say, I'm going to go create my own business. And it takes a while to get there. And you eventually, those thoughts that are kind of like, I would do this differently. If it were my company, this is the decision I would make. Suddenly you get that threshold at which you say, I can't not try this. I can't not do something on my own. And it doesn't matter. There might be that one final thing that gives you the impetus to go ahead and strike out on your own, whether it's you get laid off, maybe you get fired. I mean, most serial entrepreneurs have been fired. I can tell you, growing up right out of college, and after deciding teaching wasn't going to be for me, and I had always been raised in Christian schools, and I was trying to teach in public schools, and I had never been exposed to that sort of thing before, so it just wasn't a great fit for me. And the whole thought of even, trying to find a stable job, I can remember year after year, every year at Christmas, I would be fired for some crazy reason. It's like I tried to get a job at the state and, work with the mentally challenged, and, one of them ran away and got away from me overnight on one night, and I ended up getting fired for that, and just, different things. It was like, it was always like, some crazy circumstance would happen to me. And for like 3 or 4 years in a row, I was like fired every year at Christmas. My family was so tired of like, are you going to use that excuse about not having a job, not to get us gifts again? But it was true. And it just took a while to find what was well suited for me. So then whenever I did find that job, I stuck with it. And so for the next 25 years, I kind of did the same thing with a couple different companies. But it really, some of those things that we think are tragic might be coming along at the right time to kind of push us in that direction. If you've already been thinking those thoughts of, if I could only do something on my own and not have to pull into the parking lot of work every day and have something in the pit of my stomach that just makes me feel icky, Absolutely. I think we've all had those jobs, or even you get a new job and you think, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is so great. This is perfect for me. And then like 2 weeks later, you just feel like you have lost your best friend because the realization has hit that this is the same old crap as it was at the last company, and you're going to have to put up with it for the next 20 years until you retire or whatever it is. And it's just disheartening because you're like, I thought this was the job. I thought this was the one. And it isn't, if you've got the entrepreneur thing in you, it never is.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a big law of attraction girl. And, I think we always, even if we don't realize it, I know, like this is just my knowing, and you don't have to agree with me, but I know that we always bring to ourselves exactly what we're supposed to. So what helps me personally is in those moments of despair, frustration, or whatever, just really, like you said, recognizing that there's a reason this is happening. This is my wake up.
Yeah, and sometimes that friction that we feel of things not going right, or getting passed over for the promotion, or feeling like you didn't get a big enough raise, or whatever it is that is driving that discontent within you, sometimes, we need that little bit of friction. It's like the oyster that has to, do the sand to get the pearl out of there. You need that. Otherwise, you would be so comfortable, you would never take a leap. You would never step out on your own. So I would just say, when those things start happening, look for signs that the universe might be pushing you in a different direction. And it might be before you're ready. I hate to say it, but if we all waited until we were ready, we would probably never do it. You just have to go sometimes.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned that because, when I wrote my letter of resignation to my last employer, I actually said, thank you. Thank you for having such a bad facility, because
Absolutely.
if it was not like this, I probably would stay until retirement, right? I had a
Absolutely.
government job. It was
Hmm.
comfortable as far as, by traditional standards, and it was killing
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
And if I would not have had such a shitty experience there,
Yes.
I would
Yes.
never have left.
Yeah. No,
So
it's so true. And that's, we'll never want for a steady stream of people feeling disillusioned with the corporate world and wanting to walk away. So I think, the quicker we can help those people that are walking away transition into something to replace that, then the more justice for those people that have maybe been mistreated and sold themselves short by working for corporations whenever they could actually have a much better life if they chose to go out on their own.
yeah, absolutely. So now let's talk about when you did decide to go out on your own and you moved to Florida, and
Yeah.
you kind of made a very big transition. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we had been down to the Keys several years on vacation, and we had always had it in our hearts and minds that our hearts are partly Hawaiian, and we love Hawaii, and we would go there every year, and we wanted to live over there. But logistically, that's a nightmare. We have animals, as you might hear in the background. Occasionally, we'll get a bark here and there, but it's just not an easy place to move with a bunch of stuff and that sort of thing. So we thought, that's going to be something that's going to happen whenever we're 65 or 70 years old, if it ever even does. And as we came to the Keys and we started meeting people that were local, we found out that this is the subtropical climate in the, lower 48. And we have very much summertime weather all year round. And it just became very apparent through a series of circumstances where we would go home from vacation, and every day we would wonder what's going on in the Keys, what's the weather, what's the newspaper, and we talked to our friends that we had made down here, and we just could not get away from it. So we finally said, what we did is we weren't really sure if we should go or not. On paper, you know how Susie Orman has that show where you call in and say, can I do this? And here's my situation. And she's like, denied. Well, let me just tell you this. If we had submitted our proposal to Susie Orman or anyone that had 2 bits of common sense, they would have said denied, because on paper we could not make it work. And we just decided that all we would do is walk through the next open door. And if we walked through that open door and the one behind it closed, then we would know that was our answer. But if the one behind it kept open, we just said, you know what, the next open door, we'll walk through the next open door. And that was all we committed to doing, is walking through that next open door. And honestly, within 6 months of coming back from vacation, we had already, my wife had gotten a job down here teaching. She teaches school. She can make it with the kids. I couldn't, don't have the patience for it. We had bought a house. Don't ask me how. We didn't have a ton of savings. Don't ask me how. We bought a house that was twice as expensive as what we were currently paying in South Carolina. And we didn't sell our house in South Carolina. We just rented it out. So, now we've got extra mortgage. And all of that happened, and we had places to live during the transition period. Everything worked out, and it was in a way that we could not have orchestrated ourselves. We could not have planned all of it to come together. But the whole thing is the universe was conspiring for us, and all of those people that were supposed to come into our lives came into our lives at the right time. And it was a scary thing for me, being someone who's earning 2/3 of the family income, to walk away from a 6-figure job with paid health benefits, matching 401k, and all these things, and say, I'm going to start over in Key West, and I'm going to move down there, and I'm going to have a house that's twice the mortgage, and I'm going to have 0 income coming in until I reinvent myself. And I didn't have a lot of savings. I mean, we had taken every dime we had to get down here, buy a house, and that sort of thing. So it just doesn't make sense on paper. But once we were willing to take the step and just said the next open door and the next open door and the next open door, everything fell in line. And part of it was because we were just willing to take. All we had to do is be willing to take that one step. We didn't have to be willing to take the whole journey. And I think that's important for people, because you don't have to say today, I'm going to be able to quit my job next month and do my own thing full time. But maybe your step today is, I'm going to set up a side hustle. And today I'm doing one thing, and I'm going through that next open door and the next open door and the next open door. And before you know it, that whole journey takes place in a much accelerated way that you could never have imagined on your own. It happens that way. I don't know why it is, but it does.
It totally does.
It
And I think
does.
a piece of that is just allowing and trusting and having faith that you already have put out there into the world, into the universe, into whatever, what you want. And that
Right.
desire, as long as you continue to desire that, and there's lots of things, of course, we can do,
Yes.
and all kinds of different things like that to increase. But at the end of the day, you've put out God, spirit, universe, whatever. You put it out there. This is what I want. And when you recognize your surroundings, all of the good things, it's like you, exactly like you said, conspiring.
Yeah.
I know I had gotten in my head, okay, well, I want to make this much money. I want to make $6,000, like,
right,
or something, right? And then, it didn't happen. I wasn't making $6,000, but I was making, $50 here, and I was making like $20 here. And so there's two choices there. And what most people do, and what I would have done before, would have been, okay, I got $20 here. Okay, I got $11 here. Okay, but not really going, yes, I just made $20.
Yeah.
And I found that when I started doing that and really celebrating those little things, more things were coming. And I think it's the same as like those open doors. It's like when you put it out there and you go, this is what I want, and you recognize all of the amazing things happening that are helping you to move in that direction. It's like more doors open, more windows.
And what you, it's so true. And what you realize, and I get a little bit tired of, I have had several people say things to me like somehow they think that I am luckier than them. Like, you're lucky. You're lucky that you live in Key West. Yeah. Absolutely zero luck involved in it. It was a conscious choice we made, and we said we will do whatever it takes to live there and to be happy there. And because we did that, we didn't, like I say, our debt to income ratio was, terrible as far as Susie Orman would be considered. I didn't think we had enough money in our budget, our monthly budget, to buy another car, much less buy a house, that was like way more mortgage than I would have ever had before in my life, that I would have ever even thought about having. It would have given me a heart attack before. And so there was nothing, there was no inheritance, there was no job waiting, there was no housing waiting. But all of those things were taken care of because we knew we were supposed to be here, and the next step and the next step and the next step led us exactly to where we were supposed to be. But I will tell you, even then, once I got down here, I had no job. And in a tourist-based area, most of your jobs are going to be hospitality type jobs. And, coming from having to replace a six-figure income, that was just not feasible for me. And so I knew I had to do something. I started to get just immediate cash flow coming in. I started a food cart business down on the world-famous Mallory Square for the Sunset Celebration. So every night I would go down and make liquid nitrogen ice cream, and that was sort of my cash flow. But when I looked at it, it wasn't a business that I could count on long term for financial growth. I mean, number one, there's so many variables: the weather, the tourist season, the competition on the pier that the Sunset Celebration is held on. And not just that, but one hurricane comes and you're out of work for a year because there's no tourist in town. All of those things, and the fact that it was me. I had to go every single time. The rules of the event were that the owner of the food cart had to be there every time. It's not like I could pay a couple of high school kids $8 an hour to go down there and sell. I had to be down there. So it just got to a point where I'm like, I cannot achieve everything I need to in that situation, but I still needed something coming in. You can't have those times whenever you leave that regular paycheck. And Friday comes and everybody else is getting paid, but you don't have anything coming in. It will scare you to death. There'll be sleepless nights. You'll think, what have I done? Why have I decided to ruin my life this way? Why, what am I going to do? Am I going to go crawling back to South Carolina with my tail tucked between my legs and say it didn't quite work out for me in Key West? All these things. And we have the imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this? What was I thinking? How in my mind did I even think this was a good idea, or that I can even do this?
So how do you overcome those things? Because we all go through those, that negative self-talk.
It is.
You try and be positive, and in your brain, you know what you should be doing, but it happens to everyone, no matter where you're at. Every single person goes through those kinds of negative talk things. What do you do to? There's
really two things that I do. And the very first is I give them a very small amount of time. So in other words, when that fear comes up and that paralyzing, almost like I'm having heart palpitations, I'm not really sure that I can breathe kind of thing comes in, because that would happen. And, your stomach gets upset. You look, you don't even, God forbid that something would happen and you have to even log on to look at your online banking because you don't want to know how bad it is. And you're just thinking, oh God, is that alert that I set for the threshold, the low balance threshold, is that going to come, is that going to come tonight or tomorrow morning or after I've already bounced a bunch of, checks or, all of those things come. So you give that fear its place for a very brief amount of time, and then you move on. And the thing about fear is most people respond in one of two ways. It either motivates them to take action, or it paralyzes them with complete overwhelm and just paralysis. And my wife and I respond in two completely different ways to fear, and I take action and she gets paralyzed. So
good partnership.
Exactly. So what happens is, if you are one to take action, then actually fear is perfect, because it gives you something to channel your action into. In my mind, if I found out that my night at Mallory Square was not good enough money-wise, and I didn't make a lot of money, or I was disappointed in the results, I was always looking and saying, what can I do? Do I need to change my signage? Do I need to change my products? Do I need to change my price point? Do I need to change my serving size? What do I need to change to tip the scale? And every single thing that I would try might put me closer to either knowing it's not going to work, or yes, I did make a difference. Okay, if I can make a few more of those small moves before the end of the week, I can have what I need for this week. And so those fears are actually, that's how you learn. If you walked into business and everything was easy in the first time and everything you touched turned to gold, then you would have zero growth, you would have zero learning, you would have no trial and error, and all of those things are what make you good at being in business. And the failures are the only thing you learn from. You don't learn from success. Nobody looks and be like, woo, we had an awesome day or an awesome month or whatever. Now let's deconstruct our success. No one does that. But what do? We deconstruct the failures to figure out what we can do. So, with that fear, it plays, to me, I have to let it motivate me, because if I don't, it will paralyze me. But I know I've got to take action. I just can't sit there and go down like that. I'm not going down without a fight. And in business, it is survival. Every day is survival of the fittest in business. And if you don't view your business that way, you're not going to make it most of the time, because you've got to get up and have that never say die attitude every single day.
Woohoo. Hear, hear.
It's true. It's true.
Absolutely. So
whether you feel like it or not.
Total truth. So now there came a point in time where you realized that the food cart was not the right thing for you, and you decided to do something else. Bring us up to speed on what you're doing now and how you made the decision to do it, please.
Sure. I had begun back whenever I lived in South Carolina, and the very last job I had, I ended up I got recruited by a company that was willing to pay me significantly more than I was making at my current job. The only caveat was it was 85 miles of a drive from where I lived to where the workplace was. So it was a 2-hour drive, essentially, straight interstate, almost 2 hours drive with the traffic and that sort of thing. And so I began to listen to podcasts, and I was a super consumer of podcasts because I had almost 4 hours a day locked in my car driving to and from work.
Wow.
And so, so I listened to everything that was out there, and that's when I became, hooked on podcasts. And I realized you could learn to do anything you wanted to do on podcasts. So I completely immersed myself in business podcasts. I listened to every single one. And at that point in time, I decided I wanted to do one. I had no idea what I was doing. I started a 5-day-a-week interview podcast with local small business owners because I felt like there was this prevalence of people coming into the internet marketing space that were becoming big gurus, so to speak. And I'm not a big guru fan most of the time. And so what would happen is it's like, oh yeah, they made $1 million last year. Everybody's going to them for help now. And yeah, they've been in business 2 years. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, you've got the plumber next door who's built a thriving family business for 4 generations. And, it has been the fabric of the community, and they're a multi-millionaire, and nobody's going and spotlighting their stories and sharing what they know. So that was the goal with my podcast. So I was continuing to do that all through when I moved, and even when I came down here and did the food cart. And I got to a point where I needed to make a decision. I needed to either go full on with a business of my own and hire out the people to do the production on my podcast, or I needed to get a job or do something else. And so I just decided to look around, and I could not find the company I wanted to hire because I essentially wanted to be able to create content and then walk away and have all those other things fall into place for me for my podcast. And everything in the podcast industry was sort of piecemealed. Like you went to this person to get your audio editing done, and this person does your social media, and this person does your show notes. And I just felt like there was a better way. So I consolidated it all, and I started my company, Team Podcast. And I had the idea for it in December of 2014. And in April of 2015, I got my first client and processed my first payment. So I'm not quite a year into the having actual client part of it. But in 2015, I was able to work with over 60 podcasts and play a part in their production in some way, shape, or form.
So I just want to I'm going to pause you right there.
Sure.
Because I want to really get this. I want to go into this a little bit more so our
Sure.
really get it. So you had the idea in December.
Yeah.
And in April, you had your first pay. Your first paying client. And
exactly.
People don't talk about that. We don't talk about that it took 4 months to make $1 in this new business.
Yeah. So I thought about it for a month. It takes like a month of thinking about it. Could I really do that? And then doing a little research. What else is out there? Is this stupid? That's what we always think. We say, is somebody else doing this? Oh, they're almost doing it, but not quite, and you look for all those kind of excuses, not to proceed. And I finally just thought, you know what, I'm going to just do what I got to do. And so I put together my website. I pulled together the key players that I knew I would need to start that had certain specialties that we could start with. And then I just started making relationships in Facebook groups. And it took it does take months of relationship building sometimes before you get a client, because in a relationship, you learn to know, like, and trust the person before you just turn over your credit card to them. And with podcast, there's something very sacred about working on somebody's podcast, because this is in many times the coup de grace, so to speak, of their whole existence is culminating in being able to produce this content for the podcast. You know what I mean? It's really like birthing a baby, and people don't just turn over their children to you, without knowing, liking, and trusting you. And so, I just knew that the only way I could build a business is the only way I'm comfortable doing it, which is value driven, relationship driven. And I'm not a slick salesperson. I got a long way to go in that department, but it definitely takes a while. 4 months. In that 4 months, I continued to. Hang on just a second. I've got a dog. I've got what? Hang on. What are you doing? Do you not know the other door is open? Oh my gosh. That's crazy. So in 4 months, I still continued to do my food cart business, and so I would do that and hustle on my team podcast on the side and just continue to talk to people and build relationships. And even after I got my first few clients, and that wasn't enough to pay the monthly bills. So I had to continue, to do both for a while. So it took a while, a couple of months of me doing both before I could finally say, okay, every day I go to the pier to sell ice cream, I'm leaving money on the table, so I need to keep my butt right here and make money. So, yeah.
But it does take time, and I think that's for a lot of the people that I work with, especially when they're just starting out, or in that first few years, even after they've been hustling for a while, they're like, the money's trickling in. Why won't it happen? And they're trying to force it more. And it's like when you step back and you make that really good plan and you really look at what it is deeply that you're doing and why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, and then you just start providing value, like you mentioned. You give away in your interactions in Facebook groups, you're developing relationships because you help people without expecting something in return.
Right.
And I think that's a model that a lot of people would benefit from exploring, because when we're out there, being that slick salesperson and trying to market and trying to sell, we're actually doing a disservice to ourselves and the people who need us the most.
It's
because
true.
the people who need us the most, they're looking for an angel, and when nowadays we have information overload, things are coming at us in all ways, shapes, and forms, and people are skeptical, like they've been burned. So when you're going out there and you're serving and you're producing content and you're solving problems for people, it's just a natural thing for them to go, I want to work with you. How can I work with you?
Yeah, it's true. And the one thing about me, I will say this: desperation is a powerful motivator. And when I put myself in a situation by walking away from a comfortable job and kind of creating a new life for myself, that desperation was what motivated me. Now, a lot of people will use that as, okay, what can I do today? I need to make money quick. And they'll go for that quick buck. And that's where a mistake is made many times, because you never get a chance to go back and re-impress people in a different way than you did whenever they originally found you, And so if people find you because you turn them off and you're self-promotional and you're salesy and you're markety and you're, spamming your stuff everywhere, it's just, no one's going to go for that. But it takes longer to build relationships. But at the same time, that desperation can, it can go either way. For me, it motivated me to keep going. And I knew I could keep doing the food cart as long as I needed to. It wouldn't be the job of my financial dreams, but it was a good time and, beautiful environment and that sort of thing. But that whole desperation factor is sometimes what sends people into some less savory practices or habits. And, we see them all the time, posting in podcast forums that say, okay, so I'm thinking about, I'm going to leave my job next month. And I want to know really, I want y'all to give me the download. Can I seriously start a podcast and be able to replace my income within 30 days? And my answer would unequivocally be absolutely not. Don't even have that expectation going into it. I don't know anything. I mean, let's face it, if there was anything out here that we could say universally would allow anyone that tried it to replace their income from their regular job in 30 days, why would anybody be working? And so it's, it's just one of those things about even though you're desperate, get started in your business on the right foot, because that value and building relationships and having people know, like, and trust you will get you further down the road than any quick turnover of a buck you can make because you cut corners that way.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. I think it's a really good time or a really good point that we can start wrapping up,
Sure.
because you and I can talk all day, and
yeah, of course we can.
Get to talk to you 2 times today, unfortunately. But yeah, let's, before we do, can you tell me who was your greatest mentor or influence?
Well, I'll tell you, my mother is a great influence on my life, and the interesting thing is that my mother passed away when I was 16 years old, and so whenever she died, she was only 41. And now that I have far surpassed that age of 41, I realize truly how young she was. But I look back and I learned so many lessons about character and integrity and being a person of value and guarding my reputation and my work ethic and that sort of thing from my mother. And I would like to think that, if she were alive today, that she would be just a completely valuable resource for me to, bounce ideas off of. I don't have her here, so I've used my dad instead. He's a valuable, valuable resource and calls me all the time saying, how's business? Tell me about business. And last week I was at PodFest and I get a text from my sister that says, Daddy texted me and he didn't want to bother you, but he was wondering if I heard from you about how the conference was going. And so then, so it's just one of those things where it's cute to see him taking an interest. And I know that if my mom were around, she would be very much right in there with that. But those valuable lessons that I gained as a child by having, the Beaver Cleaver type idyllic family are things that I know are a gift because not everyone got to experience that kind of a childhood. And so I'm very, very grateful for that because it's highly unusual as a 47-year-old woman to say I have, never been abused. I've never been in a situation where I've been verbally, physically, sexually, or any type, had any type of abuse, and I've had nothing but support. And that's a rare thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a gift. And so my parents have just been incredible mentors to me. And because of them, I am the person that I am, not necessarily the business person, but I am the person. And to me, the person is more important than the business person.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. Christy, where can people go to find out more about you?
Sure. The best place to reach me online is if you go to teampodcast.com, and that's just teampodcast.com. There'll be lots of stuff there. We're adding stuff all the time. I've started posting a little more regularly blog posts, and I'll be doing some more streaming things like social media with Periscope and Blab and those sorts of things you'll find there, as well as we've got some membership site planned in the future. And just everything about trying to equip the best the podcaster to be the best they can be, no matter where they are in their journey. So teampodcast.com is where you can find me.
And you work with podcasters who are podcasters, and you also work with people who are thinking that they might like to become podcasters.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Because there's so much in between there. There's, I find so many people are at the point where they have a lifetime of experience that they could pour into podcast content, but there might be a technology barrier. It might be some people are entering podcasting for the first time and don't really have that internet marketing component that they, the background that they would have to help promote their podcast. And so all of those things we can sort of help fill in the gap for and get them on the road to getting their message out, because some people really have things that need to be shared with the world. And I would say to anyone out there that says, I have a great idea and there's so many people that could be helped by this could change their lives and my life. If you don't know what steps you need to take, if you get the help you need, whether it's from me or whether it's from someone else, you will get fast-tracked into having that podcast created, and then you are able to impact the world in a way you were truly meant to.
Brilliant. Christy, thank you so much for being here.
You are very welcome. Glad to do it. Glad I got a double dose of it today.